Hey Spartan Nation, how are you today? I'm glad to be back with you. I want to give a shout out to Michael Russo. So he said that he's really been enjoying the trivia for the states and the capitals and the presidents. So this is my last read for this semester, but I may do some more because we're finishing our Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and after this you can take an AR test. And remember to read the other stories in the Chronicles of Narnia. So last time we had gotten up to Franklin Pierce, our 14th president. We had George Washington, first president, John Adams, second, Thomas Jefferson, third, fourth president, James Madison, fifth president, James Monroe, sixth president, John Quincy Adams, seventh president, Andrew Jackson, 8th President, James Knox Pope. 9th President, Zachary Taylor. 13th President, I don't know why I said 9th. 13th President was Millard Fillmore, and the 14th President was Franklin Pierce. And today we're going to talk about the 15th President, so I want you to think about who the 15th President was, and I will reveal it at the end. Last time we talked about the state and the capital of Illinois, and the capital was Springfield, that's right. Alabama, Montgomery. Alaska, Juneau. Arizona, Phoenix. Arkansas, Little Rock. California, Sacramento. Colorado, Denver. Connecticut, Hartford. Delaware, Dover. Florida, Tallahassee. Georgia, Atlanta. Hawaii, Honolulu. Idaho, Boise. Illinois, Springfield. And today we're going to talk about Indiana. What is the capital of Indiana? And we'll reveal that at the end. All right, I'm going to start with nursery rhymes. And remember, last time I showed you my favorite from when I got these when I was in second grade, and I've read them all the time. I love these things. I wore this book out. All right, I'm going to read Wee Willie Winkie. Wee Willie Winkie runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs in his nightgown, rapping at the windows, crying at the locks. Are your babies in their beds? For it's 8 o'clock. That's one of my favorites. And then here's another one. Mistress Mary. Mistress Mary, quite contrary, how did your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. So here's Wee Willie Winkie. And here is Mary, Mary, quite contrary. Or Mistress Mary. Either way you can say it. Okay, so those were our nursery rhymes for today. Well, I found a Babar book. And this was from Mr. Hamer's childhood library from when he was a kid. Babar loses his crown. And this was copyright was 1967, so 53 years ago. Babar loses his crown. The Babar family is going to Paris. Everyone is packing bags. Here are the children, Paul, Flora, and Alexander. Here are cousins Arthur and his friend Zephyr, the monkey. Queen Celeste and King Babar pack their crowns. Babar puts his crown in a little red bag. Hey, Cat, you want to see the pictures? Now, the Babar family is on the train. The train is coming into Paris. I will show you everything, says Babar. You will love Paris. Now they are off the train with their bags. The Babar family is waiting for a taxi. The taxi takes them to their hotel. Celeste and the children walk inside. Babar tells the porter, be careful with that little red bag. My crown is in it. I don't know if I'd let anyone handle my crown. In their hotel room, Celeste opens all the bags. Last of all, she opens the little red one. Look, she cries. What is this? A flute. Babar, that is not your bag. My crown, it's lost, cries Babar. My crown is gone. Oh no. I think I know what happened, says Zephyr. When we were waiting for the taxi, I saw a man beside us, a man with a mustache. He must have taken your bag. I need my crown, says Babar. I must wear it tonight. Don't worry, says Celeste. We'll find the mustache man. We'll look all over Paris till we do. Do you think it'll be hard to find a man with a mustache in Paris? So out they go, looking for the man with Babar's bag. He may be up in the Eiffel Tower, says Celeste. All visitors in Paris go there. Now they are up in the Eiffel Tower, but the man with Babar's bag is not. Look at the boats down there, the children shout. Let's go for a ride. Babar is sad, but he goes along. A boat is ready to take off. Captain, wait for us, shouts the children. They climb aboard. The boat is going toward a bridge. Suddenly Zephyr shouts, Babar, look! Up on the bridge, the mustached man. He is there with your bag. The children all shout, Captain, stop! Stop the boat! Let us off! Look, here's the man. The boat does not stop, so Arthur dives off. I'll catch him, he cries. I'll catch the mustache man. Arthur climbs out of the water just as fast as he can. He is all wet. He sees the man with the bag. Arthur calls to him, but the man does not hear him. He is walking away. Arthur runs after him. He waves. He yells, Come back, mister! You have Babar's crown. But now the man is on the bus. The bus goes down the street. Now the mustache man is gone. Do you know how to say mister in French? It's monsieur. Arthur is standing in the sun to dry his clothes. Suddenly he sees the whole family. They are running toward him. I'm glad to see you, he says, but the red bag, it got away. There's another red bag, shouts Alexander. He points to a man sitting on a chair. The man is giving crumbs to the bird. Papa, that bag looks just like yours. Yes, it may be my crown bag, Babar says, but we must be sure it is the man with the mustache. They watch the man a long time. I'm sure it is the mustache man, says Zephyr. The Babar family circles round him. Babar says, The man looks up. He is not the mustache man at all. Oh, excuse us, said Babar. We thought you were someone else. Now it is noon. It is time for lunch. Babar takes them to a sidewalk restaurant. But Babar cannot eat. He is thinking about his crown. He needs it tonight. He must wear it to the opera. But how can he? He fears his crown is gone forever. Then Arthur jumps up from the table. There he is, yells Arthur. The man with your crown. The man is getting into a red taxi. He has the little red bag in his hand. Quick, shouts Babar. We'll chase him. We'll chase him. The Babar family is in 2 taxis. Follow that red one, they all shout. A policeman whistles, but they race right past him. Ooh, is that a good idea to race past a police officer? But now a red light They have to stop. They are stuck. They can't move. The red taxi is gone. Poor Babar. His crown is lost again. They get out in front of the market. I guess we'll have to forget about my crown, sighs Babar. So the children begin to run and play. They race round. They hide behind boxes. Then they see another man with a small red bag. All the children rush after him. Arthur knocks over a box of apples. Zephyr knocks over a box of fish. Now the whole Babar family chases the man with the bag down the stairs of the subway. They all follow him. Stop, please, Mr. Mustache. Will he stop? Too late. Stuck again. The gates at the bottom of the stairs snap shut. Bring back my crown, shouts Babar. But the man gets on the train, and the train goes away. Will they ever catch up with the man with the red suitcase and possibly Babar's crown? Sadly, they came up from the subway. Babar says nothing. He's very, very sad. All the children are very tired. Celeste says, well, we'll put the children to bed in the hotel. Then we'll leave them and go to the opera. Back in their hotel room, they say goodnight to the children. The three littlest ones are half asleep. Celeste has put on her best dress. She tells Babar to wear her crown. Thank you, he says, but it's too small. I will go with no crown at all. They arrive at the big opera house. It is all lighted up. They see hundreds of people going inside. Oh my, sighs Babar, all those people will see me, the king without a crown. I just can't go in there. Would you go in without your crown? I think I would. Then bang! A man bumps into Babar. A man with a bag. The mustache man. Then they open their bags and Babar says, I can wear a crown, but I can't wear a flute. The mustache man smiles and says, I can play a flute, but I can't play a crown. It turns out to be a great night after all. The crown is on the head of the king, and the flute is under the mustache's man's mustache. That was a great book. Babar loses his crown. There's many Babar books that you might enjoy, and there's one about an art museum, and I meant to read that to you. It was in my bucket of books that I've been reading. So look for some Babar books to read. And this takes us to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We are in the last chapter, chapter 17. 17, The Hunting of the White Stag. The Cat in the Hat is very sad. He said that he was hoping that the story would go on and on. Well, you know, there are 6 other books in the Chronicles of Narnia. No, I'm not going to be able to read them on YouTube at this time. But yes, I might read them to you at night. So make sure that you check those out if you get a chance. The battle was all over in a few minutes after their arrival. Most of the enemy had been killed in the first charge of Aslan and his companions. And when those who were still living saw that the queen was dead, they either gave themselves up or took to flight. The next thing that Lucy knew was that Peter and Aslan were shaking hands. It was very strange to see Peter looking as he did now. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed to be much older. It was all Edmund's doing, Aslan, Peter said. We'd have been beaten if it hadn't been for him. The witch was turning our troops into stone right and left, but nothing would stop him. He fought his way through 3 ogres to get to where she was, just turning one of your leopards into a statue. And when he reached her, she had sense to bring her sword smashing down. He had sense to bring his sword smashing down on her wand instead of trying to go for her directly, and simply getting made a statue himself. That was the mistake all the rest were making. Once her wand was broken, we began to have some chance. If we hadn't lost so many already, he was terribly wounded. We must go and see him. They found Edmund in charge of Mrs. Beaver, a little way back from the fighting line. He was covered with blood, his mouth was open, and his face a nasty green color. "Quick, Lucy," said Aslan. And then almost for the first time Lucy remembered that precious cordial that had been given to her by Father Christmas. Her hands trembled so much that she could hardly undo the stopper, but she managed it in the end and poured a few drops into her brother's mouth. "There are other wounded people," said Aslan, while she was still looking eagerly into Edmund's pale face and wondering if the cordial would have any result. "Yes, I know," said Lucy crossly. "Wait a minute." "Daughter of Eve," said Aslan in a graver voice, "others also are at the point of death. Must more people die for Edmund?" "I'm sorry, Aslan," said Lucy, getting up and going with him. And for the next half hour they were busy, she attending to the wounded while he restored those who had been turned into stone. When at last she was free to come back to Edmund, she found him standing on his feet and not only healed of his wounds, but looking better than she had seen him look, for ages. In fact, ever since his term at that horrid school, which was where he had begun to go wrong, he had become his real old self again, and could look you in the face. And there on the field of battle, Aslan made him a knight. "Does he know," whispered Lucy to Susan, "what Aslan did for him? Does he know what the agreement with the witch really was?" "Hush, no, of course not," said Susan. "Oughtn't he be told?" said Lucy. "Oh, surely not," said Susan. "It would be too awful for him. Think of how you would feel." "All the same, I think he ought to know," said Lucy, but at that moment they were interrupted. That night they slept where they were. How Aslan provided food for them all, I don't know, but somehow or other they found themselves all sitting down on the grass to a fine tea at about 8 o'clock. Next day they began marching eastward down the side of the great river, and the next day after that. At about tea time they actually reached the mouth. The castle of Caerphilly on its little hill towered up above them. Before them were the sands with rocks and little pools of salt water and seaweed and the smell of sea and long miles of bluish-green waves breaking for ever and ever on the beach. And oh, the cry of the seagulls. Have you heard it? Can you remember? That evening after tea the 4 children all managed to get down to the beach again and get their shoes and stockings off and feel the sand between their toes. But next day was more solemn. For then, in the great hall of Caerphilly, that wonderful hall with the ivory roof and the west wall hung with peacock feathers, and the eastern door which looks towards the sea, in the presence of their friends and to the sound of the trumpets, Aslan solemnly crowned them and led them to the 4 thrones and the deafening shouts, "Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edward! Long live Queen Lucy!" And here's the castle at Caerphilly. Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen. Bear it well, sons of Adam, bear it well, daughters of Eve, said Aslan. And through the eastern door, which was wide open, came the voices of mermen and mermaids swimming close to the shore and singing in honor of their new kings and queens. And through the east, so the children sat on their thrones, and scepters were put into their hands, and they gave rewards and honors to all their friends, to Tumnus the fawn, and to the beavers, and to the giant rumble-buffer, and to the leopards, and the good centaurs, and the good dwarfs, and to the lion. And that night there was a great feast in Caerperville, and revelry, and dancing, and gold flashed, and wine flowed, and answering to the music inside. But stranger, sweeter, and more piercing came the music of the sea people. But amid these rejoicings, Aslan himself quietly slipped away, and when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there, they said nothing about it, for Mr. Beaver had warned them. "He'll be coming and going," he had said. "One day you'll see him, and another you won't. He doesn't like being tied down, and of course he has other countries to attend to. It's quite all right. He'll often drop in, only you mustn't press him. He's wild, you know. Not like a tame lion." And now, as you see, the story is nearly, but not quite, to an end. These 2 kings and 2 queens governed Narnia well. Long and happy was their reign. And at first, much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them. And indeed, for a long time, there would be news of evil things lurking in the wilder parts of the forest. A haunting here and a killing there, a glimpse of werewolf one month and a rumor of a hag the next. But in the end, all the foul brood was stamped out, and they made good laws, and kept the peace, and saved good trees from being unnecessarily cut down, and liberated young dwarfs and young satyrs from being sent to school, and generally stopped busybodies and interferers, and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. And they drove back the fierce giants. Quite a different sort than the giant rumble-buffin on the north of Narnia when these ventured across the frontier. And they entered into friendship and alliances with countries beyond the sea, and paid them visits of state, and received visits of state from them. And they themselves grew and changed as the years passed over them. And Peter became a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet, and the kings of other countries beyond the sea, began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage. And she was called Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter, and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. So they lived in great joy, and if ever they remembered their life in the world, it was only as one remembers a dream. And one year it fell out that Tumnus, who was a middle-aged fawn by now and beginning to be a little stout, came down river and brought them news that the white stag had once more appeared in his parts, the white stag who would give you wishes if you caught him. So these 2 kings and 2 queens, with the principal members of their court, rode a hunting with horns and hounds in the western woods to follow the white stag. And they had not hunted long before they had a sight of him, and he led them a great pace over rough and smooth and through thick and thin, till the horses of all the courtiers were tired out, and only these 4 were still following. And they saw the stag enter into a thicket where their horses could not follow. Then said King Peter, for they talked in quite a different style now, having been kings and queens for so long, "Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses and follow the beast into the thicket, for in all my days I've never hunted a nobler quarry." "Sir," said the others, "even so let us do." So they alighted and tied their horses to trees, and went on into the thick wood on foot. And as soon as they had entered in it, Queen Susan said, "Fair friends, it is a great marvel, for I seem to see a tree of iron." "Madam," said King Edmund, "if you look well upon it, you shall see that it is a pillar of iron with a lantern set atop of it." "By the lion's mane, a strange device," said King Peter. to set a lantern here in the tree cluster so thick about it, and so high above it, that if it were to lit, it should give light to no man. Sir, said Queen Lucy, by likelihood, when this post and this lamp were set here, there were smaller trees in the place, of fewer or none. Where do you think they've become? Where do you think they've come to? For this is a young wood, and the iron post is old. And they stood looking upon it. Then said King Edmund, I know not how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that I have seen it the like before, as if it were in a dream, or the dream of a dream. Sir, answered they all, it is even so with us also. And more, said Queen Lucy, for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures, or else some strange change in our fortunes. Madam, said King Edmund, the like foreboding stirreth in my heart also. And in mine, fair brother, said King Peter, and in mine too, said Queen Susan. Wherefore, by my counsel, we shall lightly return to our horses and follow the white stag no further. Madam, said King Peter, therein I pray thee to have me excused, for never since we four were kings and queens of Narnia have we set our hands to a high matter, as battles, quest, feats of arm, acts of justice, and the like, and then given over, but always what we have taken in hand, the same we have achieved. Sister, said Queen Lucy, my royal brother speaks rightly, and it seems to me we should be shamed if, for any fearing or foreboding, we turned back from following so noble a beast as now we have in chase. And so say I, said King Edmund, and I have such desire to find the significance of the thing that I would not by my good will turn back for the richest jewel in olive Narnia and all the islands. Then in the name of Aslan, said Queen Susan, if ye shall all have it so, let us go on and take the adventure that shall fall to us. So these kings and queens entered the thicket, and before they had gone a score of paces, they all remembered that the thing they had seen was called a lamp-post, and before they had gone 20 more, they noticed that they were making their way not through branches, but through coats. And next moment they all came tumbling out of the wardrobe room into an empty room, and they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy in their old clothes. It was the same day and the same hour of the same day in which they had gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. McReady and the visitors were still talking in the passageway, but luckily they never came into the empty room, and so the children weren't caught. And that would have been the very end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt that they really must explain to the professor why 4 of the coats out of the wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a remarkable man, didn't tell them that they'd been silly or they were telling lies, but believed the whole story. No, he said, I don't think it will be any good of you trying to go back to the wardrobe to get the coats. You won't get in Narnia by the same route, nor would the coats be of any use if you did. What's that? Yes, of course you'll go back into Narnia. Always a king in Narnia. But don't go trying to go in the same route twice. Indeed, don't try to get there at all. It'll happen when you are not looking for it. And don't talk too much about it among yourselves. And don't mention it to anyone else unless you find that they've had adventures of the same sort themselves. What's that? How will you know? Oh, you'll know all right. Odd thing they say, even your looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open, bless me. What do they teach them at these schools these days? And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it is only the beginning of the adventures in Narnia. And that's the end of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I hope you enjoyed it. I want you to take an AR test, and you'll have to read the next installment in the series. Until next time.